Reactive training systems.
Alright, since previously we talked about high stress weeks and what the purpose of all that stuff is, let's talk a little bit about low stress weeks. Low stress weeks are when the training stress is below your threshold for recovery. So we're doing less training than you're able to recover from. Now for me, in the way that I program it, I don't typically program whole weeks off. I think that that's just too much time for most trained athletes, especially if you've trained yourself to have a decent rate of recovery. If you've trained that drain size to be a good solid rate, so that our recovery outflow is at a good solid rate, I don't want to waste an entire week because we're letting detraining happen. We let some just a lack of sharpness creep in. So it's better to keep that training stress there a little bit. So we're not talking about turning the faucet off. We just want to reduce the flow a little bit so that you're able to recover and make up. Generally, it's make up for an overstress situation. Maybe you went high stress, or maybe your medium stress weeks aren't perfectly calibrated, and you gradually accumulate a little fatigue here and there. Or maybe you're interested in improving your responsiveness, improving your adaptability, and sometimes that's important as well. So we need to have a low stress week. I don't typically, like I said, I don't typically turn the training off. I also will typically include movement patterns that I don't always get to include. So as powerlifters, we tend to squat, bench, and deadlift, and almost everything we do is a variation thereof, at least in terms of joint mechanics, in terms of just general movement. So we get really, really good at those things, but things like rotational work, even related movements like overhead work tends to get pretty neglected. So during a low stress week, I might really, really turn the stress down on all the powerlifting competitive movements, but I'll introduce a little bit of other stuff like single leg work, like overhead work, rotational work, upper back work, things that we don't normally get to in the normal programs. I don't include a ton of that stuff because, again, the intent is for it to be a low stress week. So we don't want to compromise that objective. So we include a little bit of that work, but not enough to really push us into a higher stress level. And that helps us to be more durable. It helps us to be more responsive to training when we return back to our normal training. It helps us to cope with the overall fatigue level that an athlete's coping with, their overall level of water in the sink. So as you can see, having a decently developed level of work capacity is important. If you have a poor work capacity, I'm not going to be able to add in any of these neglected muscle groups at all, because if I do, it's going to take us out of that low stress zone that we want to be in. So developing that work capacity is really, really important, and it's got to be done carefully, especially for people that have very poor work capacities. It's got to be done carefully. So that's it. That's a little information for you guys on low stress weeks and low stress training. I'll talk to you next time.
Reactive training systems.